Welcome to the Old Man of the Three Things with JJ, Redick, and Tim Legler. Today's episode, the very first episode of the Old Man of the Three Things that will be distributed on all audio platforms. It will live on our normal feed. Please go hit that subscribe button. Our full video up on YouTube. Tim, thanks so much for joining us. Special day for us here at the Old Man of the Three Things. I thought, given what I thought was a very entertaining first week of NBA basketball, you and I could talk about three things each that really stood out to us. Could be a team, could be a player, kind of open-ended here. And you and I don't know each other's answers beforehand, so we're going to have some fun with this. Why don't you start? Give me something that stood out for you from the first week of the NBA.
All right, perfect. First off, this is going to be an awesome. I'm glad to be on here with you. And this first week of the season, JJ, there was so much anticipation coming into it because of some guys changing teams, some guys in new roles, trying to see if some of the key guys that we think are on relevant teams are going to take that leap forward. And it's a very small sample size, but we both know we've been doing this long enough and watching it and playing it. You can get some indicators early to give you an idea where those things are trending, even though it's only been a few games. So I think the first thing that jumped out to me without question, because I think this is one of the true X factors in this entire league, and that is the play of Tyrese Maxey. Right? You got to look at what Tyrese Maxey did in this first week of the season, particularly with everything hanging over this organization's head, with all of the drama surrounding James Harden, with everything that happened in the offseason, with everything that's happening now with James Harden, pulling up to try to jump on a plane to go to Milwaukee, being told to go home, right? There's so much swirling around them. And we know, look, they've got the MVP of the league in Embiid. They've got that unique talent. This is a team that certainly, you've got to talk about constantly because they have enough talent to make things interesting. I'm looking at Maxey's first week, JJ, and I think the thing that jumped out to me as I watched all three of those games start to finish. I'm saying to myself, they don't need James Harden. They don't need him. Now, look, people, it's funny because there's this faction of people out there that think I've got some personal issue with James Harden. No, I don't. Not at all.
Talk through it, Tim. Talk through it. What's your personal issue?
I never do have a personal issue with any players, right? So this is about two things. One, I think the anchor that James Harden is around Joel Embiid's ankles and the organization. So it's about that and removing yourself from that. And I know that's easier said than done. And that's a whole nother, we could do an hour conversation just on how difficult it is to trade a player like James Harden, particularly this stage of his career, with everything that he brings with him. Right, there's a couple spots around the league that seem to make sense, and the Clippers probably at the top of that list. And that's a whole nother conversation. I'm just talking about what you get out from under with Tyrese Maxey out there with the basketball, playing the way he's playing, because he brings obviously elite level talent, and you want to see is he that guy? This never should have lasted this long. They should have moved on from Harden earlier because it becomes much more of a buyer's market in trying to get him and what your return is going to be. So this should have happened a long time ago. But the key to it all is Maxey that guy? Is he an all-star caliber player? Potentially even, hey, is this guy an all-league caliber player? And what you have seen from the first week of the season is eye-popping. Not just the numbers, 30 plus a night. He's also up over 6 assists a game, which that's been the big criticism of him. They've had 3 different guys lead them in assists in 3 games. I don't think that's a bad thing. Okay. He's not going to be a guy that's going to go out there and get you 8 to 10 dimes every night. He's not a traditional playmaking point guard. He's an elite level scorer. He's a 40+% 3-point shooter. He shoots it off the dribble, off the catch. Here's the most important thing, JJ. He plays with an energy and a positivity that affects Joel Embiid. It affects their organization. And he, early on here, is showing the Sixers what this could look like if they can get out from under Harden and they bring in some guys that fit around them. And you're not getting back all-stars for James Harden. You're going to get back role players. Do you get back the right ones to now move forward with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey as the 2 guys driving this thing every night? And early returns for me this first week, mind-blowing. what Tyrese Maxey looks like, what the Sixers have looked like. They had a 1-point loss to the Bucks and then 2 wins. Now, in the next 10 days, JJ, they've got Phoenix and Boston coming into their building in the next 10 days. All right, so you really want to get a gauge, and hopefully Phoenix is at full strength and everybody's playing, and we know Boston, what they've looked like early. Those are 2 great barometers. But Harden could be out there, so it'll be interesting to see what they look like here early in the first week, and maybe what they look like with a couple of those marquee teams coming into their building. But I'm saying, look, you're okay, Philly, giving the ball to Tyrese Maxey and moving forward to get out from under this cloud and get some return of guys that fit around these 2 star players.
Yeah, I've been, what is the expression? Pounding this drum. I've been pounding this drum since they were eliminated against Boston. And I said, when they fired Doc, it's like, whoever the next guy is, you got to put the ball in Maxey's hands and figure out how good this guy can be. You got to maximize Maxey. And so far, again, early returns. I'm not overreacting. I'm just saying I probably was right. A couple things really.
Hey, listen. If you can't send yourself some flowers, JJ, you might never get them.
I don't want to make it about myself, Tim, but I will.
Right.
No, I it's interesting because when we had Maxey on, one of the things we discussed with him was the playmaking piece is interesting. So if you're the third option, right, and you're a young guy, you don't have a guaranteed second contract yet. You're trying to find your place in this league. I think his role was pretty clearly defined as that offensive pop, right? As that 20-point a night scorer, be aggressive, get out in transition, shoot it when you have it. And so I don't think the playmaking necessarily was a priority. And it's very different if you know you're going to have the ball in your hands, particularly in the half court more. By necessity, you talked about the difference in leading assist guys in each game. By necessity, I don't think you need a James Harden, a guy who's going to dominate the basketball and set the table for everybody else if they're going to play the way Nick Nurse wants to play. It's been a point of discussion throughout this preseason. Yeah, more body movement, more ball movement. Joel and James aren't going to dominate the ball. I think that helps Maxey. It frees him up, right? And he can, as he's shown through 3 games, he can be a playmaker in the traditional sense. 2 things really pop for me with him. First of all, he's shooting the shit out of the ball. 8.3 attempts and shooting 56% from 3. I don't think 56% on 8.3 attempts is sustainable. What could be sustainable and what is really interesting is his ability now to get to the free throw line. And he's just under 8 attempts a game, shooting over 91%. And for his career, he's been, in the 3 to 4 range. So the increased usage and the increased freedom that he could potentially get, if he becomes one of those guys who gets to the line 8 to 10 times a game with the way he shoots the basketball, you're talking about going from a 20 to 22 point per game scorer to a 25 to 26 per game scorer. All the elite scorers in our game find a way to get to the free throw line. And so far, he's done that. And I agree with you. If this relationship with James Harden, if it really is fiend, if it's really over, right? Getting role players back, the right role players that fit with what they're trying to do, and Maxey elevating his game, yeah, Philly's in the conversation now. Philly's in the conversation.
Here's something else, JJ. Last thing on Maxey for me. Here's where this is something that is so impactful for their entire team. When Maxey's on the floor with Harden, Tyrese Maxey end to end in this league, put a ball in his hands. I'm gonna go out there on a limb and say, I'm putting money. He's one of the five fastest guys in the league end to end with a basketball. Taking an outlet pass somewhere in the backcourt around your own foul line and getting to the rim at the other end. He's top 5 in the league with that kind of straight ahead burst with the basketball. When he plays with Harden, more often than not, he gets out and runs. Now, he's still fast. I mean, he's probably even faster running without the ball. But guess what? The threat isn't the same on the defense because the ball in James Harden's hands is not being advanced at that rate. So even though Maxey can get out and run, and every now and then there'll be that advance pass to him and he'll catch it. They don't do it nearly enough when they play together. He catches it just over half court and attacks a backpedaling defender and gets to the rim. You see Maxey do some of that. More often than not, he doesn't, because Harden holds on to the basketball, brings it all the way up across half court, and Maxey ends up, running almost all the way down the baseline, and then he comes back up and he floats, and now he's going to wait and see what action are we going to run, and he stands there and pressure is off the D. When he is on the court without Harden and the ball's coming to him, or he's grabbing it off the rim because he's averaging 6+ boards a game, he takes it himself. The pressure and surge initially up the court with a live handle with a guy that fast is so good for these other role players because of what you are going to do to force guys to sprint back into the paint to get, a body in front of him, get at the edge. And now you've got guys running into open 3-point trail threes. You've got even Embiid running into potentially a trail 3, which he likes to shoot a couple times a game. The pressure is so different when it's outletted to him as opposed to when he just runs the wing. And that's what I've seen here in these first 3 games. That first 2-3 dribbles, he's already in basically the 3-point area scoring on the other end of the floor. And look at the scrambling, frenetic rush to get back. What does that create for some of these other guys that are not going to create offense for themselves? That's what's been so impressive to me about this early look that we've gotten. And now, let's see what happens with Harden. He's going to rejoin the team here soon. And let's just look at a comparison. What does it look like with him? What does it look like without him? We've got plenty of sample size with Harden the last couple of years, but not when Maxey's looked like this. He's so comfortable. I want to see the impact when Harden gets back. And what does that do to the organization and Nick Nurse and the way they view everything, including Joel Embiid?
Yeah, in the NBA, you talk about like offenses unto themselves, right? And you could talk about Denver could run a Nikola Jokic post up, right? Or with Sacramento, the Sabonis dribble handoff game, whatever it may be. But Tyrese Maxey in transition or in delayed transition, as you're talking about, that's an offense unto itself. And I totally agree with you that it's not just him scoring the basketball in those situations. It's the pressure that he puts on the defense, which then creates scrambles, which then allows the role players to get theirs. One thing that stood out for me for sure, because I called the game on Wednesday, and then he followed it up with a masterpiece against Brooklyn. Luka has stood out for me. And I think you'll agree with me on this, Tim, that this is a guy, Luka Magic, Wonder Boy, all that stuff. He's made 4 first-team All-NBAs in a row as a guard. This was the first year towards the end of last season and throughout this summer where I felt like Luka was maligned. There was a lot of Luka slander online. And by the way, some of it is just, right? The not getting back on defense after he thinks there's a foul. Like, that's a real thing. I get it. But I think to a degree, like, the dude's awesome. We can all agree Dallas hasn't built this like spectacular juggernaut around him. So to me, it was the first time in his career these last 6-7 months where he's facing some real criticism. And he starts out the season with a 33-point triple-double, which I called, and I'll get into that game in a second. And then he goes and he scores 49 against Brooklyn. And these 2 games were very different. This is what makes Luka so special. So the 2 games were very different. Against San Antonio, they're primarily playing this deep drop with Zach Collins. And Luka, because of his size, the screening angles, all that stuff, he's able to get so deep into the paint, into the defense, and he makes those decisions late. Is he shooting? Is he throwing a lob? Is he jumping up in the air like Tyrese Halliburton and making that no-look skip pass to the corner for a 3? So in that first game, he's orchestrating. It ends up with a 33-point triple-double. Then they go to Brooklyn, or they play against Brooklyn, and Brooklyn is a switch-heavy team. They've got a lot of long perimeter defenders, and they switch a lot. And so Derek Lively doesn't play as much in that second game. I think he played like 17 minutes. And a lot of it turned into iso ball. And then you see the elite shot making of Luke. I saw this today. He's on second spectrum, 70% effective field goal percentage through these 2 games. He's in the 22nd percentile in the NBA so far of shot quality. He's just making ridiculous shots. And another thing that stood out, and this is where I just love the pregame interviews we get to do with the coaches. We were talking with Jay Kidd about the defense, and by the way, Zach and I kind of raised some question marks about the Dallas Mavericks defense, and did they do enough to address some of these concerns? And I found this out after the game because a few members of the Mavericks organization said some words to me. It rankled some people in the Mavs organization. But there's still question marks about the defense. But Jay Kidd pregame said to me, we're very comfortable playing in the 120s. And the Brooklyn game was a great example of that. They are comfortable playing that we're going to outscore you type basketball. And although they were literally terrible, I think they were 5-14 in clutch games after the Kyrie trade last year. They clearly have the ability. Kyrie's been one of the most clutch performers in terms of, points, fourth quarter points, all that stuff. Luka, we know he's clutch. So they feel comfortable in these 125, 120 games like they had against Brooklyn the other night. But I just go back, Luka just starting out the season, averaging 41, 11.5, 8.5 on 48% shooting splits. Like, if you're Dallas, you couldn't have asked for a better start. And the second half from Lively in that opener was just fantastic.
Yeah, look, Lively really brings something to them they needed. And a lot of people around the league are talking about what he looked like, 12th pick, and to have that kind of an impact and to be somebody that you can kind of just throw it up to anywhere and he can go get it, runs the floor like a deer. They need that kind of athleticism with the way Luka plays and having that other option when you're trying to figure out how to take away what he's doing on ball screen or ISO. You've got Kyrie waiting on the swing pass to attack. Well, there's a gap there down the lane that's going to be available for Derek Lively. And he's playing with one of the best passers in the league to reward him. So Lively's been fantastic. Everything you said about Luka is true. And the guy was watching the game you called, and the deceleration 3-point play that he had in the second half was one of the most absurd things I've ever seen. I watched it probably 5 times. I don't know that I've ever seen a guy.
We've seen the decel before. We've seen the decel before. I don't know that we've seen a complete break.
Right.
Like
that was like
slam the brakes at the stop sign type thing.
Yeah. And people out there, that maybe watch the game or love the game, or maybe you play the game, at your local health club. Go try that sometime. Try going full speed down the lane with a dude on your hip, 2 dudes back there waiting on you as a last line of defense, and then literally slowing everything down to the point where your body completely stops and being very comfortable operating in that space. It's very difficult to do. So look, he's been ridiculous. They have to love the start out of him because, he's had years where he didn't get out of the gate shooting the ball like this. So he looks great. One of the things that stands out about him when you watch him, you go, I've never stood on a court next to Luka. I've never had to put my forearm into Luka. I can't imagine how strong this dude must be because he doesn't, come off with all this body definition and he's not jacked and ripped. He's got very wide shoulders. He's got a wide base, but the way he rides people ride him to the rim and he's so unaffected by really strong, long, athletic defenders that are getting all up into his rib cage and his hip. And he just literally doesn't seem like he knows they're there. It's so special, unique unto him. It's unique the way he understands the next line of rotation. So he's already processing where he thinks that guy's coming from to throw, that pass from outside the right side of the lane to the left corner on a rope. So guys like us could stand there and get, an extra half a count. And now you got like a guy that's a 35% shooter can become a 60% 3-point shooter. Like we're seeing all of that. I have one problem with Luka, with JJ. And it's not even the referee thing is actually at a point where I'm tired of talking about it because it's so ridiculous to me that he can get caught up in these conversations while the other team is on a fast break. It's one thing if you drive in and you get raked and the ball goes out of bounds, right? You thought you got fouled, and then you go over to the ref while you're waiting to take the ball out of bounds and have a little conversation. Action is stopped. He tends to have these nice long conversations while they're breaking the other way, 4-on-3. And maybe he would have been the guy, to pick up that second pass on the secondary break. So that's one thing. Here's the thing I will ask you. look at the contending teams in the league. And you and I have talked about these tier 1 teams. Milwaukee. Giannis, would you call him a conscientious defender?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Would you call Jason Tatum a conscientious defender in Boston?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. How about Kevin Durant in Phoenix?
Yes, Kevin for sure. He was
LeBron James
before. Hey, Kevin in Brooklyn last year before the Phoenix trade was all league defense. His numbers were
no
insane.
doubt. He has that capability of being an absolute total game changer at that end. LeBron, the other tier 1 team.
LeBron was engaged in that Denver series. I mean, that really stood out to me, the way he guarded Jokic. Yeah, he was engaged.
And then
conscientious.
And that leaves Denver. That leaves Denver. And whether you think Jokic is a good defender or not, it's absolutely calling him a conscientious defender. If you watch him defensively, he's communicating. He's constantly looking. His head's on a swivel. He's not going to be the most athletic guy, and he's not going to necessarily go get something above the rim as a shot blocker. We get it. So I'm not saying that Nikola Jokic is an elite level defender, but he absolutely is a conscientious team defender. That's where I have a problem a little bit with Luka. I'm not sure that when your top guy has that many moments throughout a game that you can point to, regardless of what Jason Kidd said about living in the 120s, that's great. And I don't know that defense is necessarily as critical in the modern NBA, the way it's played. The numbers are putting up, the number of threes that are taken. But at least you need to know that guy's laying it on the line. And look, maybe for 12 minutes in a tie game, you're going into the fourth quarter, he'll be a little bit better in that moment in fourth quarter. And he'll be better if he can guard someone that's a little bit more physical. Guys with a live handle getting ball screens or having to keep a guy in front. I still don't know that I see the level of commitment out of him that permeates your entire roster where guys are looking like, man, this dude is bought in. And I want to see more of that. Is that going to be a maturity thing with Luka? Will he ever add it? Or is he just going to be so good offensively that stuff is masked? The number of plays in a game where he just kind of waves at a guy on an ISO, or he's jogging back in transition and somebody gets that slash cut that maybe he could have impacted. You know what I mean? So I look at the contending teams around the league and look at their top guys and what they're willing to do defensively, possession by possession. I don't know if I put Luka in that category, and that's why, as great as he is offensively, I just don't know if there's going to be a breakthrough for the Dallas Mavericks to get them into the top tier.
I stopped by the Dallas locker room after the game and to say hi to the training staff, and Luka happened to be on the table, so I went over to him and I was talking about the D-cell bucket, how sick it was. And the first, he just lit up. And the first thing he said to me was, hey, but the defense was pretty good. I tried, right? I tried. It is on his mind a little bit. Yeah, it's on his mind. All right. I want to do this one real quick because, I'm going to, this is probably left field for some casual NBA fans. But the second year guy that has just blown me away so far this season is Jalen Duren. And when we discussed the Pistons over the offseason, we discussed this young core. People were talking about Wiseman. People were talking about Bagley. I'm like, Jalen Duren is your starting center. He is the guy that's going to be your center for the foreseeable future. And his effort level is just tremendous. It's tremendous. This guy's averaging through 3 games, 18 points, 15.3 rebounds, 4 assists, 2.7 blocks, shooting 80% from the field. Detroit, by the way, 2-1. Their only loss was opening night at Miami. They lost by 1 point. And there's nothing fancy. There's nothing fancy about Jalen Duren. There isn't. He is just end-to-end relentless. And you look at how he's scoring the basketball. He is scoring off of offensive rebounds. He's running hard in transition. There's against the Bulls, there was 2 plays where he's starting point the same as Nikola Vucevic, and he beats him by 5 strides, just outrunning people. And then the thing that gets me the most excited is the 2-man game, the pick and roll and the dives with Cade Cunningham. Because for me, if Cade has that pick and roll partner, that guy that's going to create pressure on the backside of the defense, can catch the pocket pass, can finish at an elite level, well, that's just going to open things up for not only Cade, but for everyone. And this tandem already has so much chemistry. I literally watched every single clip of Jalen Duren, both defense and offense, from the first 3 games on Second Spectrum last night. This guy is killing it. He's killing it. And it's just effort. And then there's this cool budding partnership with Cade Cunningham that gets me really excited.
Yeah, I love this because, people that are watching this are hoop junkies, right? That's why they're watching us right now. And early in the year, it's hard. I mean, even for us, we do this for a living. We get paid to do this. You can't get to every team. Like, it's just hard just early in the year. And some of these teams we know you've got to get to early because, by Christmas, you might not be that interested in them anymore. We're going to start talking about 8 to 10 teams the rest of the year. So it's important to go bounce around the league and see some of these guys. And that, I think this is a great one because I think a lot of people probably didn't expect much out of the Pistons coming in. And so you're probably not on your radar, but now you've put them there. And the main reason is Jalen Duren. Now, Cade Cunningham's the number 1 pick. Cade Cunningham, we know what his upside is offensively, potentially, but he is not going to be able to maximize who he is unless he has the right piece as a big that can not only run the 2-man game, but this is a guy, look, he's played 100 minutes. He's got 46 rebounds. 46 rebounds in his first 100 minutes to start the year. He doesn't stop. There's a relentlessness to Jalen Duren that I think when you watch the Pistons play, jumps out at you as it's different than everybody else on the court. And there's a number of guys around the league for different reasons that do that. Jalen Duren does it because of how hard he attacks the rim every single trip on both ends to go get the basketball. He's been a rim deterrent. He's not only blocking them, he's making guys think about the fact that he's back there. He's shooting 80% from the field. It's a pretty good return on your investment to throw the ball to Jalen Duren on a screen dive or to go get it off the glass and put it back. So I love that you've put him on blast for people right now. Go check him out. Probably going to want to check him out early because we all know this, right? The Pistons are 2-1. It's great. They're not going to win at a 67% clip this year. We know that. So at some point, we'll probably have less opportunity to talk about the Detroit Pistons. Go get you some Jalen Duren right now. Get League Pass and go watch the Pistons play and see what this guy's doing. Because JJ's that's spot on. I think he's been an eye opener early.
A couple things real quick. Literally, he's got 2 buckets that aren't the 3 plays I described, right? Out in transition, offensive rebound, or diving off of Cade pick and roll. One was a little lefty hook against Charlotte, and the other, which I loved, was he brought the ball up against Chicago, 5-out delay. So he's at the top, bringing it up in delay action, and just gives Vucevic a little juke at the top of the key, goes right, scores a layup. There's something in there. The 3.7 assists. Like, how is he getting those assists? Well, he's actually made a couple plays out of the short roll when they've doubled Cade. He's hit Thompson for a back cut for a dunk. He has a great awareness on his offensive rebounds of, all right, I have a chance to score and put it back, or I get an offensive rebound. I'm making that quick decision out to a shooter, knockdown 3. Like it's not just I'm going to go play hard. He's thinking the game right now. The turnovers are a concern for all of Detroit. Cade's averaging 4.7. Jalen Duren is averaging a little under 4. Like there's still some young player basketball happening. But I'm excited, man. I'm excited about Detroit. All right, give me your second thing.
Second one, I'm going to go, since I started in the East, let's go out West. And it's your boy. We'll talk about your boy a little bit.
Who's my boy?
Chris Paul. All right. And here's why. And it's interesting. You said earlier that you asked a question about the Mavericks defense and you ruffled some feathers, right? And you found out later. So I went out to Golden State a couple of weeks ago and I was interviewing their core guys, including Steve Kerr, Mike Dunleavy Jr. We had Draymond, Clay, Kevon Looney, Chris Paul. Steph, unfortunately, had a commitment, couldn't be there that day. We didn't get a chance to talk to him. And I asked a question, and look, and he was incredibly accommodating, couldn't have been nicer, sat there, was great with all the questions. But it was obvious when I asked the question about style of this team and the way he has played his entire career, walk me through that. That bothered him. I felt like he felt that was a condescending question to a guy on his level. Like, what do you mean? I can't fit in? He actually looked over like toward the PR guy in the room and said, yeah, that's why I don't like answering questions like this or doing these kinds of interviews. And I thought your question was valid, and this is a valid question. Like, whatever Chris thinks about it, it's a valid question. When a guy plays a certain way and plays at a certain pace and has the ball in his hands when he's most effective, to now go into a system where the ball's advanced through the air more often than not, there's a whole lot of cutting that takes place off the ball. There's all kinds of different types of reads that you make that you don't make, when you're a traditional point guard in this system. So it's a valid question. It seemed to bother him. And here's why I want to focus on him. So this whole thing about coming off the bench, right? And I'm gonna just say to the media in the Bay Area, do you want the Golden State Warriors to be relevant, get in the mix, and become a tier 1 team and you be a legitimate title contender? They're right there on the cusp, and they can certainly make an argument why they are. Stop asking them the question. Just leave it alone. Leave it alone. Because the more he gets asked about it, the more ticked off he's going to be, right? And that's not necessarily a good thing. So, and the reason I bring that up, look at the first game Draymond comes back, Chris Paul's off the bench. Now, every single person, JJ, that I asked about Chris Paul when I was out there interviewing all these guys said the same thing. It was almost as if they were given a script. And here's what they all said. Can't turn the ball over that much. We can't turn the ball over that much. That's why we got him. We cannot turn the ball over that much. Steve Kerr's exact quote was, we aren't good enough to turn the ball over 18 to 20 times and overcome it anymore. We're not on that level anymore. We've got to have better ball protection, shot quality. That's why they got Chris Paul. And the reason I think that's relevant, you look at his first game, he comes in 5 minutes into the game. So he wasn't on the bench long. They're down 6 at the time or 7. He plays the next 12 minutes of the game. The Golden State Warriors committed 1 turnover in the next 12 minutes, and they were a plus 20 during that stretch. So he checks out of the game 5 minutes into the second quarter, and now they've gone from down 7 to up 13. They had 1 turnover. It wasn't like Chris Paul was coming out running traditional high screen ball screen and finding guys. He had a few assists during that stretch, and he made a shot, I believe. It wasn't about that. It's about understanding balance and spacing and floor and talking to guys. And that level of IQ is going to pay huge dividends. So early on, they're still averaging 14 turnovers a game. And a lot of that's because Draymond had 4 and Kuminga's turning the ball over too much. Those guys have to cut it down. But if they can get that number down in that 13 to 15 on a given night, man, all those extra possessions mean extra shots for Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Andrew Wiggins and these guys. And that's what Chris Paul's going to bring. It's 1 game coming off the bench, but so far, if he embraces this, what he's going to do with the second unit and what he's going to do for their offensive efficiency, I think we've gotten a taste of it. That's going to be critical for the Golden State Warriors, who can't overcome things the way Steve Kerr said, and defensively not quite as good. Well, the best way to do it is take care of the basketball and let these guys that are elite level shooters get shots. The more of those, the better. And that's what they got in that first game. And Chris Paul was great in that role. And I think he's probably doesn't want to get asked about it again the rest of the year.
Yeah, I thought he was great last night. I watched that whole game against Houston. And some of it is, he doesn't have the traditional DeAndre Jordan roller, right? Even DeAndre Ayton, who got really good in that little short roll area, hitting those 15-footers. Like in terms of the traditional big man that he's had in his career to run pick and roll with, he doesn't necessarily have it with this Warriors team. But he's so smart. He's still going to figure out ways to get guys shots. When he checked in the game last night, they made 3 threes in the first quarter off of his passes, right? So in some ways, it's the IQ. It's like ball swung to me. I got Klay Thompson on the left wing. I'm getting to him quick. I know Klay can get this off quick. I don't have to wait for the big to come into a pick. He's just playing basketball, and he's so good at figuring it out. One point I want to make, and then we'll move on. The point that Steve made, I think, is important. You look at the early, let's call it 15-16, pre-Kevin Durant, right? Jump shooting teams can't win. Well, you can if you have a really good defense. You have a Hall of Fame defender in Draymond Green. You have a two-way player in Klay Thompson. You have the 2 greatest shooters ever. Yeah, you can win.
Right jump shooters.
Yeah, you can win. Yeah. And in some ways, the trend that I think started with Phoenix, then probably my Magic teams, then Dame and Houston with Harden and the Warriors, of course, of shooting more threes, the analytics moving, all this stuff. So some of that margin for error is, well, everybody shoots threes now, right? Everybody's shooting a lot of threes. So although you still have the two best, that margin has been not nullified completely, of course, but it's a little thinner now, right? That margin's a little thinner now. So then you start talking, well, these guys have gotten older. Clay's had major injuries. Draymond's had some injuries. Like, they're not the same that they were 5 or 6 years ago. Now, Steph looks like the same fucking dude, if not better. Then, of course, you didn't really, there was no margin with Kevin Durant. It was just like, you're better than everyone. Like, right. It's like, whatever. Right. And so I think the point about turnovers is important, because bringing in Chris, if he can mitigate some of those turnover problems, all right, well, now you've increased your margin in some ways. Like it's a net positive for a season, a playoff series, a game, whatever it may be. He's going to help in that regard, and he's obviously impacts the game in a number of other ways besides just not turning the ball over. But I think specifically with this team, yeah, it's a perfect sort of marriage. I'm going to throw this out there because this is just a short one. One thing that stood out, I watched the afternoon game yesterday against the Thunder. For all the talk this offseason about a lot of teams that added pieces, players potentially taking a step forward, new faces and new places. Hey, guy, the Denver Nuggets are pretty fucking good. Like, they're pretty fucking good. Yeah. And, you go that Lakers game where Jokic just absolutely dominated. They get a win on the road against the Grizz. Jokic's three-quarter court alley-oop pass to Aaron Gordon, by the way, was one of the best passes I've seen in my life. But then yesterday against the Thunder, this is a Thunder team, right, that has some hype, has some buzz, and they just dominated them. And what really stood out was the continued cohesiveness. So obviously the 5 starters looked excellent playing together. But I thought Peyton Watson, Christian Braun, Reggie Jackson, like all the talk about Bruce Brown being gone, like it's early returns, I know, but we're looking for indicators. And I saw some good things. There were a couple of those, baseline drive, slot cuts from Peyton Watson, gets a dunk, just thinking the game. Christian Braun out in transition, playing off ISO. Like, there was some good stuff from those 3 guys, but man, that starting 5, the cohesiveness offensively and defensively, guys just playing to their role, playing to their strengths. They're going to be a really good basketball team again. And Nikola Jokic is pretty damn good at basketball.
I'm glad you went here, because I'm watching them and opening night, ring night, they get their rings. We know how that can go a lot of nights. We've seen it time and time again. Like those teams in that moment, there's a fog in the air, literally, because a lot of times there's like fireworks in the building. So there's literally a fog in the air. But then there's also just like, it's a surreal experience that everyone's going through. And just, it's so different than a normal game night. And then what do? They come out, ball goes up in the air, and they basically play damn near a perfect quarter. And I'm sitting there going, are you serious right now? Like, they looked like they were playing 2 days after their last game in the finals. Like, it was just, another game. After all that time off, after, winning a championship, who knows how that affected all of these guys off seasons. And it makes it different for sure. Not just in terms of it's a little shorter because you played longer. It's just everything that comes with it. The way you're embraced anywhere you go, it's just everything's different for those guys. You come in, the whole night, that night is weird, and you come out and you basically are perfect offensively in the first quarter of the game, sending an absolute message that, hey, look, I know a lot of people might question about our cohesion on the bench, and did we lose pieces and not replace them? Well, guess what? We'll figure that part out. That remains to be seen. But how about in the meantime, take a look at this starting 5 and look at what we're capable of doing. And look, JJ, look at the guys in that starting 5 to start the year. These are the field goal percentages of their 5 players. 61 for Jokic, 55 for Jamal Murray, 47 for Michael Porter Jr., 48 for KCP, and 55 for Aaron Gordon. Oh, and by the way, Reggie Jackson coming off the bench at 50%, Peyton Watson at 67%. I mean, it just doesn't happen at the start of the year. Any team, you're just not in rhythm like this. It speaks volumes to what they had, the greatness of Jokic and his ability to orchestrate all that stuff, but just how good this starting five is and how much we're constantly looking for that argument of who's gonna be better than the Nuggets this year. Come on, man. A team's got a lot of ground to make up on this team right now with the way those five guys look together.
Yeah, it's funny. You talked last week about core continuity, and of course Denver came up, but there's a continuity of just the offense. I almost every team that I've watched so far, there's been stretches of games where you're like, all right, the offense is a little bogged down right now, And I didn't watch the Memphis game, but I did watch the Lakers game, and of course yesterday, and it's like, yeah, it's just continuous. They just flow from one thing to another. Oh, guess what? We didn't score the last two possessions. Oh, we can always go back to that double drag screen where Aaron Gordon slips and we get to the Jokic Murray two-man action with Murray going to his right hand. We can always do that, and you don't really have an answer for it. All right, give me your third thing. Let's wrap this thing up.
All right, third one is guy to change teams this year, and you knew he was going to be an impactful player, but we wanted to see exactly what that fit looked like. I came out the day that this happened, and I said, this is phenomenal for this organization to get this player, and that's Kristaps Porzingis. So I'm looking at Porzingis in Boston early and looking at their team coming in. And look, this is a team that, pretty much perennially is in the Final Four, right? They're always in the hunt there at the end, trying to figure out how to get this thing across the finish line. They make this move to bring in Porzingis. They lose two key guys defensively in Robert Williams and Marcus Smart. And I'm like, well, how are they going to replace that? Well, okay, I guess if you're going to replicate that, maybe you go get a Drew Holiday to replace Marcus Smart, maybe just the best on-ball defender in the perimeter in the NBA. And now you go get a guy in Porzingis who maybe won't have that spectacular one that he gets above the square, like coming block to block like Robert Williams can. But the guy's an elite level rim protector, has been pretty much his entire career. So you still have that component, and he can track guys. If he jumps out on ball screen at 25 feet and that guard turns the corner and beats him, 3 strides, he's going to be committed to go get that and affect the shot. I don't know how many plays so far in their first couple games of guys clearly starting to turn the corner in an ISO or a ball screen, and just seeing Porzingis back there on the block changes their mind about what they think they can do in terms of getting to the rim. So the rim protection component is still there. That deterrence is still there. But I know this, much as I like Robert Williams, he was not hanging out there and getting 30 points on the other end of the floor and just punishing you for anything you do to load up on ISOs for Tatum or Brown or any of that ball screen action. And the thing is this, JJ, here's what's so different about Porzingis. And when I compare him to a guy even like Horford, who's still on the roster, Al Horford can pick and pop and has turned himself into a big-time three-point shooter. His pick and pops, though, put his toe 2 inches behind the line. That's where Al Horford's going to pick and pop to. Kristaps Porzingis is going to pick and pop to 28 to 30 feet. Why is that different? Because the amount of rotation that it takes to get there, and not plus the guy's 7'3". So on top of it, he's shooting with that high release at 7'3". The spacing element in terms of hard trap hedge on the guard, and now I got to get back to him, you're not getting there. He's further out and he's 7'3". And if you're going to trap that ball and rotate someone else to him, they've got to go an extra step. The distances that he is at, the height that he is releasing the ball from, you're just not affecting it. He is going to get all the naked looks he wants and semi-naked ones. At 7'3", you turn them into naked ones because of your release point. He is a seamless fit for them offensively. And by the way, he's also not one-dimensional player. He's getting to the line 7 times a night. So you can run some plays in the short. He likes the short post. He's not going to get deep into the post and pound you with a drop step. He goes short post, dribble, turn around, shoot over you, and get hit on the elbow a lot, and now go to the line and shoot 2 free throws where he's going to shoot a high percentage. So you replace 2 guys with these 2 players, Holiday and Porzingis gives you the rim protection, and he's giving you much greater offensive punch and a perfect fit alongside these players. So I've been super impressed with his start to the year as well. And it just makes you love Boston even more. Those people that pick Boston to win it all, you got to love what you're seeing the first couple games.
Yeah, brought up the post-ups. He has in both these games punished the mismatches when they do switch those pick and rolls. He's gone down to the paint, either gotten fouled, gotten an and one, whatever. Joe Mazzulla, I'll bring this up probably throughout the season because it seems like we're going to be talking about the Celtics and it seems like we're going to be talking about Porzingis a bunch. But in our pregame meeting on October 8th, preseason game, of course, he said, we haven't seen the best version of Porzingis yet. And he wasn't talking about counting stats. He was talking about him playing high-level, meaningful basketball deep into May, June, and all the things that he does that impact winning. That ultimately is going to be the best version of Kristaps Porzingis. It's not about he's not going to 25 and 12. We're not talking about that. We're talking about elevating his play because it's more meaningful, because he has a real chance. And you've seen a number of quotes, whether it's from Drew or Kristaps. It's like, yeah, we all have to sacrifice. This is for us. It's a different position. These guys have won at a high level. Haven't won it all, of course, but they've been in the mix, as you said, year in and year out. And it's up to us and the sacrifice to sort of get this group over the top. Tim, always fun. We'll catch you in a couple weeks. Dunker Spot guys are back with us next week, but always fun to chat hoops with you, bud.
Yeah, man. Catch up soon, brother.
All right.
Always good.
Later.